Lord, if the framers of the Constitution would have envisaged that the property owned by the government to be used for the purposes, my lord, which are mentioned, then there was no occasion for them to say that ownership and control would be used. Ownership and control would necessarily mean that something which do not belong to the government, but in the larger interest of the common good, there can be a law passed.
But these have to be on resources of the community.
I'm coming to that, Manoj. The word used is not material resources of either the state or the government. It says resources of the community, which again leads to an indication that it includes both government property and other than government property.
Learned Solskjaer, you must have, since we are on 39B,
My lords.
and you are proposing to dissect the words there. Now, obviously, you are also going to look at, now when you say ownership, not with the government, it is obviously in the private sector.
Both.
Right.
It can include both.
It can include both.
Both.
So, ownership and control of material resources, as the Honorable Chief Justice has pointed out, and what is to subserve the common good.
I'm coming to that.
Right. This common good element is very important because
That's the, my lord, key word in the entire section.
that's right. So, whether common good, of course, this is in the context of the provisions in the MADA Act. Whether
In general, we are, my lord.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you are giving a broad interpretation.
Correct.
The discussion also has to relate to what is contained in the Maharashtra Act
Yes.
pertaining to the properties.
Yes, my lord, but nobody touched, my lord, MADA Act from the point of view of its validity, etc. It was just by way of an example. But I am, my lord, broadly, irrespective of, my lord, MADA or any movable or immovable property, any property. Property can be, my lord, a private mine, for example. It is a material resource. It is a resource not belonging to the government because it's a private mines. But therefore, my lord, the key words are, it should be, if any law is made under Article 39B, it should be A, for distribution. B, it should be to subserve common good, not good of any particular section of the society. Therefore, I say common good is the key word, my lord, of this. That you take over some property for the purpose of, say, one section belonging to one race, one religion, one caste, one profession. That is not what is contemplated. It has to be a community property not belonging to the government. It is required for being distributed, and the ultimate goal has to be common good. And therefore, my lord, in one word, this, my lord, provides for an ideal definition of a welfare state. This is not distributive justice.
The question is whether ownership of the community is also equivalent to ownership of an individual, or ownership of a community also encompasses individual ownership of property. That is the question.
My lord, that will have to be, my lord, so read. Otherwise,
whether a community means an individual.
I would answer that question, my lord. It will have to be so read, depending upon the facts and circumstances. For example, my lord, in my house, there is a rare mineral which is discovered. It's not a property of the community, it's a property of the individual. But then the key word would be material resources. If individual property has material resources which can be distributed, and ultimately for common good of the citizens.
Therefore, actually, your example is very apposite, because what your example shows is that there may be instances where, in respect of private property, there is a community interest. Now, this is clearly a case of that nature. Namely, though the property is of a private individual, underlying that property, you have say, uranium, or you have some very rare, rare resource, which is really a resource of the community. And therefore, there can't be a very strict dichotomy between private and public. At the same time, it is a little too extreme. The formulation by Justice Krishna is a little too extreme. What that formulation says is, since the community consists of individuals, and therefore every individual is a part of the community, if the material resources of the community would therefore mean also resources of the individual.
No, my lord, it will
That may be a little extreme. I'll tell you also.
This would be an extreme, my lord.
It would be a little extreme. Also, we must now be cognizant of the fact that all these constitutional provisions are they have an evolution. We are now interpreting them not in the context of the India of 1950.
Nationalization to disinvestment. That's
Right.
the transition.
We must adopt an interpretation which is in keeping with the changing nature of the times and the society and at the same time, we must also have an enduring interpretation. So it may well be that certain resources which are vested in private individuals may still have some general bearing of public interest or community welfare, the welfare of the broader community, which requires regulation by the state.
Yes, but for example, land, road, making of a road. Lord, land is a material resource when when the function you are discharging is making of a road. Lord, some land is coming in between. Lord, it is for common good, for distribution, and it is a material resource, maybe belonging to not the entire community, but an individual. So, Lord, therefore, the law will be in tune with if each and every word is existing, my lord, simultaneously. And I would, my lord, add one more thing.
Also,
Ownership.
39B postulates that there has to be a diversification of ownership and control. Why does it say ownership and control of the material resources of the community is distributed? So this is speaking about the need for diversification of ownership and control to protect the common good. That is, you don't want a concentration of economic resources in the hands of...
If they are material resources.
They are material resources of the community.
Well, it's not, my lord, for example, my lord, a rustic...
Dispersal would maybe or that's what distribution means.
Yes, my lord. Because, my lord, for example, a rustic way of looking at it is that you total up the wealth of the entire nation, divide it by the people whom you feel that needs to be distributed, and whatever is the figure, distribute it. Lord, that's not, my lord, what 39 means. Lord, that would be a lack of understanding of governance as well as economics.
We can't attribute to Article 39 B and C, at least in today's times, a sort of a definition which gives, expression to an unbridled agenda of communism or socialism.
Absolutely.
But that is not our economy or our constitution today. We still protect private property. We still protect the right to carry on business.
Property.
We still want, as part of, say, a national agenda, I won't say the government's agenda, because this is across...
No, it is an agenda of the nation, whichever is the government is.
From 1990. Yes. And so it was irrespective of party lines and government. We have now expressly adopted a policy of encouraging investment by the private sector, realizing that until then it was all right that the government was involved in very high levels of investment in the industry. But now, truly, if we have to have a productive enterprise, you have to encourage private investment.
Yes.
And therefore, our interpretation must also be, nuanced to take care of what India is today and what India is moving towards tomorrow.
Lord, investment in the private sector is now boosting common good than, my lord, what was envisaged in, my lord, 47.
For instance, in 1950, nobody envisaged that you would have electricity distribution by private companies on such a scale. Now you have that today.
Yes.
They couldn't have envisaged that, well, the private sector will be building up infrastructure like roads, like ports.
One of the judgments, very illuminating judgment.
Airports.
For example, about airports, my lord, some of the activities are, my lord, privatized. Not the essential activities like customs, security, etc. But some of the activities are privatized.
We may not have a very strict dichotomy that, well, something which is totally privately owned can never be a material resource of the community. That would be a very extreme statement.
Yes.
But it would be an equally extreme statement to postulate that everything which is private is a material resource of the community, which the Attorney General argued. That may not be
your argument is actually going contrary to what the Attorney General was.
I would, my lord,
in the middle,
a little new nuance, my lord, I would not, my lord, argue contrary to him, but my nuance is different, my lord. Your Lordship knows, my lord, what I am trying to say, my lord. And, my lord, so far as, my lord, the view expressed by my lord Justice my lord, Krishna Iyer is concerned, my lord, it deserves respect. But with respect, my lord, I would personally and on behalf of the government, my lord, would not subscribe to that view at this stage of the country's economic development.
We be sending a message across, because what we write will send a message of what India is and what India aspires to be.
Yes.
So any interpretation which we don't want to dilute the constitutional or social significance of 39B and C. It's there for us. I mean, it's given to us. At the same time, we should not be sending a message by interpreting 39B in such a wide sense. There is no protection of private rights in the society at all. How will we attract private investment if we say that there is no protection of
it? It's counterproductive. That interpretation may not be in national interest, Manoj, but
we will not go as far as to say that anything which is private can never be a material resource of the country.
No, that's another extreme.
Cannot be. Yes.
That's another extreme.
Yes.
For example, Manoj, in Mahda, but if the government sees that there are, say, 500 people staying in 500 dwelling units which are in a dilapidated condition, they may have their own justifications for staying, and there is a justification because roof over the head is a justification. The owner, who is the landlord, he will not spend because he has a justification that I am getting less money. The government is not concerned with their ownership dispute or tenancy dispute. The government would merely say that we are concerned with your life. We provide for a mechanism under which we will evict you. Somebody would pay you the rent for the interregnum till your houses are newly constructed. You fight it out whether you are a tenant, you are a deemed tenant, you have to be evicted, etc. That's not the contractual relationship we are concerned with. So that would be material resources of the community requires proper distribution for common good. So, my lord, therefore I say that each word is pregnant with meaning. And that is how, my lord, we will, your lordships may consider taking a path which is neither on this extreme nor on this extreme.
More balanced perspective on.
That's the